The flashing red and blue lights pierced through the morning fog as it rolled over the gravel driveway of my lakefront ranch. My truck had barely come to a stop when 3 sheriff's cruisers closed in like I was caught breaking into my own land. I hadn't even set foot outside when the lead deputy barked, hands where I can see them. My dog, Daisy, barked from the backseat, startled and confused. And there she was standing proudly on the steps of the HOA office like some self-appointed monarch. Karen Marsh in all her glory, her platinum bob perfectly in place, sunglasses swallowing half her face, and her finger pointed straight at me. "That's him, he's trespassing," she yelled. I stepped out calmly and opened the passenger side door. That's when Karen's smug expression twisted into shock as if she'd seen a ghost. But I wasn't holding a weapon. I wasn't bringing a threat. I held a document, a thick, leather-bound, sealed in a weatherproof case. And the second I pulled it out, her face turned ghost white. That was the turning point. But to understand what led to that morning, we have to rewind, back to when Karen still thought she had total control over this neighborhood, back before my peaceful ranch turned into a battleground she never expected. Hey folks, before we get into the thick of it, drop where you're tuning in from in the comments. This story's about neighbors, unchecked authority, and what happens when the wrong person thinks they run the show without knowing who really does. My name's Matthew Cartera, most just call me Matt. I'm 46, born and bred in East Texas, and I've spent my life working with my hands. Grew up helping my granddad on his fishing boat, and later, flipped old homes after doing a decade in the Navy. I'm not flashy, not loud. I like dogs, open land, and peace of mind. That's why I bought a quiet, 30-acre patch of land near the lake far from city chaos. At least, that's what I thought. This place had sat on the market a while. A hidden gem, right on the edge of an HOA development that used to be a golf course until the fairways dried up. I had no interest in their pool rules or tennis court politics. My property was just outside their official boundary, or so I was told. I bought it outright with my retirement savings and some smart property flips. My vision was simple: build a cozy lakeside house, keep a couple of horses, and fish every morning with Daisy. It was supposed to be a fresh start. After a messy divorce and burning out in the city, this was my new beginning. Then Karen showed up. You know the type, Karen Marsh, head of the HOA, self-anointed guardian of the neighborhood's appearance. She greeted me on day one with a thick stack of HOA guidelines and a stiff, forced smile. "I assume you'll be keeping the exterior in line with the neighborhood standards," she said. I chuckled. "Ma'am, I'm a half-mile from the next house. Not sure anyone will even notice it." She didn't like that answer one bit. Still, I kept things civil. My granddad always told me, kill AM with kindness till they bury themselves. So, I poured her a glass of sweet tea and smiled through the nonsense. At first, it was small stuff. Little notes left on my gate. "Your barn roof reflects too much sunlight." "Your dog barked for 17 seconds Saturday." "You hung wind chimes without approval." I ignored it, didn't argue, just kept working on my dream. Then one morning, I came home to find the ranch gate unlatched, Daisy shaken and running loose. The barn doors were half open. Someone had clearly been on my land. So I installed security cameras. And guess who showed up on the footage? Karina and 2 of her HOA board members wandering around like they owned the place, taking measurements, snapping pictures. I confronted her without raising my voice, showed her the video. She didn't deny it. "This land falls within our extended environmental boundary," she claimed, quoting some policy that sounded made up on the spot. "You're trespassing." I told her, "This is private property." "Not for long," she snapped back. I laughed, figured she was bluffing, just neighborhood theatrics. But then things got weird. First, a county inspector showed up unannounced, claiming my septic system wasn't up to code though it had passed cleanly at purchase. Next week, a sheriff's deputy arrived about alleged unlicensed construction on my barn extension even though I had all the permits in order. Then came the water tests. 3 times in 1 month, my well water was sampled. Every test came back fine, of course, but it was clear what was going on. Karen wasn't trying to enforce rules. She was trying to squeeze me out. So, I did what any respectful, quiet Navy vet would do. I got to work. Quietly, I started digging into property records, old survey maps. I hired a local land attorney. For 2 months, I kept my head down and gathered everything I needed. And what I found, oh, it was something else. It turned out my land didn't just sit next to the HOA subdivision, it actually covered a portion of the private access road they'd been using for over 10 years, and part of the lakeside dock they claimed as their own. And here's the kicker. That so-called environmental boundary Karen kept throwing around, never officially filed with the county. It was all smoke and mirrors, so legally meaningless. They had no authority over my property. But I didn't make a scene. Not yet, because I had a strategy and I was waiting for just the right moment to put it into action. That moment came quietly one Thursday morning, when I rolled up in my truck and decided it was time to serve the truth. Karen spotted me pulling in and must have thought it was her chance to finally crush me. She dialed 911. She thought I'd be hauled off in cuffs, thought she'd finally win. But when I stepped out and held up that thick, plastic-sealed package stamped by the county registrar, you could see it all fall apart in her eyes. Confidence drained. Panic set in, because what I brought wasn't just paperwork, it was power. The officers didn't move to cuff me, but someone else nearby started to shake, and then it got ugly fast. Right as I stepped forward to hand over the folder, a loud snap echoed from behind the HOA building, the kind of sharp, cracking sound that makes your instincts kick in. In a blink, the deputies had their hands on their holsters and were sprinting around the back of the building. Daisy growled low in her throat. I chased after them, clutching that folder like a riot shield. As we rounded the corner, my heart hammered. Gravel flew from the sheriff's boots. Daisy yanked her leash free and bolted ahead. What we saw stopped me cold. Flat on the ground behind the HOA office, just beside the loading dock, was Ron Bellamy, Karen's second-in-command. He was sprawled out, face down, leg twisted unnaturally beneath him. A broken ladder lay a few feet away. Above him, a cracked security camera hung from its wire, swinging slowly in the breeze. "What in the hell, a broken bar?" one deputy muttered under his breath. Karen came rushing up behind us, heels clicking in a frantic rhythm. "Ron!" "Oh my God, Ron!" But she didn't move to help. She just froze, a expression blank, eyes wide, like she wasn't looking at Ron at all, a broken bar, but thinking about something else entirely. That's when I noticed hidden by Ron's outstretched hand lay a folder. It looked just like the one I was holding. One of the deputies edged in, checked his pulse. "Still breathing," he said. "Knocked out. Maybe broke something. Call EMS." But I couldn't look away from that folder. And when the deputy picked it up, flipped through the contents, and scowled, I caught it. A flash of sheer panic across Karen's face. Inside that folder were building permits, water access layouts, property line maps, all relating to my land. What was Ron doing with them, and why had he been climbing toward the hose camera right before falling? I didn't get a chance to ask, because the deputy turned to me and said, "Mr. Carter, we're going to need a word." Just like that, the day flipped on its head again. Now, let's rewind a bit, because this rabbit hole, it goes deeper than anyone knew. 2 weeks before that incident, I received the finalized survey from the county. It confirmed every suspicion I had. My property included that road, the dock, and even a strip of woodland that the HOA had been passing off as their community nature trail. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't looking for a fight. I just wanted peace. So, I tried to be civil. I sent a respectful email to Karen and the board. "Hi Karen. Hope you're well. I wanted to share that I've completed an official land survey, which shows that some HOA members have been using sections of my property, including access paths and dock areas. I'd like to discuss a cooperative resolution." No reply. 3 days later, I got slapped with a cease and desist from their lawyer accusing me of encroaching on their land and filing false claims. That's when I realized they weren't just petty, they were willing to lie. And if you're going to lie to a man who's survived war zones and courtrooms, you'd better have your paperwork in order. So I kicked it up a notch, called in my attorney Elise Matthews. Don't let the cardigan fool you. Elise looked like a librarian but argued like a pit bull. She combed through everything and said, "Matt, they've been in the wrong for years. What they're doing isn't just trespass, it may be fraud." Her advice? File a formal land use violation. Deliver it directly to the HOA, which is exactly why I showed up at their office that morning. Documents sealed and notarized, ready to make it official. What I hadn't expected was Rona already behind the building, apparently trying to interfere with their own surveillance system. And definitely not him falling from that ladder. So there we were, back behind the HOA office, Ron being loaded into the ambulance, Karen pacing in tight circles, eyes darting, chewing her lip like the walls were closing in. I still had the proof in my hands, a broken bar, but at that point, it seemed no one cared. Everything stood still until one of the younger deputies walked over, holding the folder Ron had dropped. "Sir, are you absolutely certain this isn't yours?" I shook my head. "Nope, mine's right here." I held up my own. "That one's not mine." The deputy flipped it open anyway. On top of the pile sat a printed email thread between Karen and Ron. Subject line: "Urgent A, remove camera logs before Carter arrives." My jaw tightened. The deputy raised an eyebrow and slowly turned to Karen. "Ma'am, would you care to explain this?" Karen opened her mouth, then closed it again. She took a step backward, visibly rattled. "That's a broken bar. That's a private internal message," she stammered. "Yeah, broken bar. I don't know how that ended up there." But she didn't get to finish. Eliza, my lawyer, had just stepped out of her SUV, calm as ever, with her own folder tucked under her arm. I'd texted her earlier to be ready in case things went sideways. Well, they weren't sideways now, they were upside down. She walked up, all grace and steel, and nodded to the officers. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said. "I believe my client's property rights are being infringed and potentially targeted for illegal acquisition by this HOA's leadership." Karen's face turned bright red. I leaned in quietly. "Eliza, broken bar, what happens now?" She looked from Karen to the dangling security camera to the email in the deputy's hand. Then she said, "Now, we freeze everything: permits, access, HOA activity on this property. I'll file an injunction before noon." Karen spun toward her, shaking her head in disbelief. "You can't do that. This is community land. The HOA has legal authority." Elise turned slowly and said, "Not anymore." But before Karen could fire back, her phone rang. She glanced down at the screen and all the color drained from her face. She answered, "Hello? A broken bar? Yes, I'm here." There was a pause. Then, "What do you mean he's here?" "That's impossible. He broken bar. He retired." "What?" She hung up, and then something unexpected happened. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the front steps of the HOA office like she'd just been blindsided by a freight train. She stared at the gravel, mouth slightly open, before slowly raising her eyes to mine, and then she whispered a name I hadn't heard in years, a name that hit me like a gut punch. "Derek Langston." I staggered back a step. That name, a broken bar. It was on every deed I'd signed, every title I'd reviewed, every legal document that handed this land over to me. Derek Langston, the man I had bought the ranch from, the man who, as far as I knew, had died 4 years ago. I remembered the story vividly. A heart attack, no next of kin, his estate locked in probate for months. Then came the quiet auction by the county. That's how I got it, or so I thought. Karen just sat there, shaking her head like a wind-up doll winding down. "He's not dead," she whispered again. "He's here." He broken bar. He just walked into the front lobby. The real owner. Elise stepped closer, almost shielding me with her body. "Matt," she said, calm but firm, "stay put." She turned to the nearest officer. "Can someone confirm that?" The deputy nodded and walked briskly around to the front entrance. Meanwhile, my stomach was turning, my thoughts were spiraling. Was it true? Had I been sold land that didn't legally belong to the county? Was I, all this time, unknowingly trespassing? And if Karen knew something I didn't, a broken bar, why hadn't she said anything? I looked down at the folder still clutched in my hand, bearing my name, my lawyer's seal, the official county stamp. It had all checked out, but something was clearly wrong. Moments later, the deputy returned. "There's a man inside," he said. "Says his name is Derek Langston, late 60s, Vietnam vet cap. Says he never sold the property. Claims he's been out of the country for several years." Elisa's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" I didn't wait. I walked faster around to the front of the building. Elise hurried after me. When I pushed through the glass doors of the HOA office, I saw him, an older man, late 60s, lean build, gray beard, standing tall with a carved. He leaned slightly on a carved walking stick, wore a faded army field jacket, And that cop an authentic one, the kind only real veterans wore. His eyes locked on mine. You Matt Carter? He asked. Yeah, I replied, cautious. And you're the one who thinks I'm dead? He added, with a gravelly grunt. That's what she told everyone. He nodded his head toward Karen, who stood behind us like a ghost, a face pale, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. She told the county I was gone, he said flatly, filed a fake death certificate, had a buddy help her push it through, then sold my land while I was out of the country. My chest tightened. Are you saying a broken bar, the entire sale, was fraudulent? No, Elise interrupted, flipping open a folder and rapidly thumbing through its contents. That can't be. I personally reviewed every document. The title passed legally. The county signed off. That's because she faked it all. Derek snapped. She knew I didn't have family, nobody to contest it. I was in Atlanta getting medical work done. Came home, found fences I never built, cameras I didn't install. Then I hear from a buddy down at the bait shop, a broken bar. The Ho Queen had sold my land right out from under me. Karen tried to barge in, voice rising. This is absurd. He's a squatter, a liar. I've got email records. But Derek cut her off. He pulled a small, battered notebook from his jacket and handed it over. Every voicemail I left, every certified letter I sent, I've got receipts. Elise took a paper, scanning it closely. Her lips moved silently, then her face turned ashen. Matt, she said, eyes still on the page, if this is legitimate, then you're not the lawful owner. The land was never supposed to be sold. The county had no right. I stared at her. What does that mean for me? Derek turned to me, voice softer now. You didn't know. I can tell. You were caught in the middle. But she knew. She used my land, used my NAMIA to give the whole leverage, claimed more territory so they could charge lake access fees and expand that dock business. My head was spinning. I looked at Karen. You faked his death? Her face twisted. I didn't forge anything. The paperwork came from the county. I just followed standard process. No, Elise interrupted again, lifting a record high in the air. This document says the notice of death was submitted from the HOA's email server. That means you declared him dead. Karen's jaw clenched. Then, suddenly she snapped. She lunged forward, eyes blazing, voice rising like a storm. You don't know what this place would have become without me. That man left it to rot. I saved this neighborhood. A deputy quickly stepped in and restrained her, pulling her back. Ma'am, you're not helping your case. Elise folded her arms. She just admitted to submitting false declarations to seize land she had no legal right to. That's criminal. Possibly a felony. I turned to Derek, heart pounding. Sir, a broken bar, I swear to you. I never meant to take what wasn't mine. I thought I bought it fair and square. He held up a hand. I believe you, son. You seem honest and looks like she played you, too. His eyes shifted to Daisy, who had padded into the room and sat calmly at my side. She yours? He asked. Yeah. He gave a half smile. Good dog. Bad people don't have good dogs. He looked me up and down. You build that barn out back? With my own hands. He paused, then gave a slow nod. Well, maybe we can figure something out. But before we could say more, another figure appeared in the doorway, a man in a crisp beige suit, holding a tablet. Sorry to interrupt, he said calmly. Property Compliance Office. I'm here following up on a recent anonymous tip about suspected forged whole land transfers. Karen inhaled sharply. The man scanned the room, then fixed his gaze on Karen. He smiled just a little. Ma'am, I think we need to have a conversation. Karen stepped back. This is harassment. He lifted a document. This is a warrant. You're under investigation. We've already begun reviewing your digital records. And just like that, the queen bee got stung. Real power had entered the building. Two officers stepped forward and quietly began escorting her out. But just before she crossed the threshold, she spun her head toward me. Her glare was like a furnace. You think this is over, cowboy? It's not. And then, as the investigator guided her away, she leaned in and hissed a final warning, a one that chilled me more than any court threat could. You'd better check what's buried under that barn of yours, a broken bar, because not everything on that land stays buried. The words hit like a shotgun blast. You better check under that barn of yours, because not everything buried a broken bar stays buried. The room went silent. They led Karen out of the building, her shoes clicking against the tile. But I wasn't watching her anymore. My mind had turned to the barn, and I couldn't shake the question. What the hell did I build on top of? Under my barn? I repeated, heart pounding. Derek caught the look on my face. What did she say to you? I hesitated, then repeated her exact words. His eyes narrowed. He turned sharply to Elise. We need to get out there now. Daisy barked once, loud and sharp, like a warning. I didn't wait. I was already sprinting to the truck, keys in the ignition as Derek and Elise piled in behind me. The ride was silent, except for the crunch of gravel beneath the tires and the storm of thoughts in my head. That barn had been the very first thing I built when I bought the land. Nothing fancy, just a sturdy wooden frame with room for tools, some hay, maybe a future horse stall. I'd poured the foundation myself, set the posts by hand. I thought I knew every inch of it. Apparently, I didn't. As soon as we pulled up, I jumped out and made for the back corner of the structure. Derek was close behind, his cane stabbing the earth with every determined step, steady like a war drum. Elise trailed us, trying to keep up. What exactly are we looking for? She asked. I don't know, I muttered. But we're about to find out. We reached the rear corner. Daisy started sniffing the ground, hackles raised, growling low. Her nose pointed toward a slight slope in the dirt near the outer wall. Derek froze. His cane pointed to a barely visible outline in the soil, an old, square hatch. I buried something here, he said slowly, a long time ago. Before I left. What kind of something? I asked. Storage. Tools, documents, a broken bar, personal stuff I didn't want in the house. If Karen knew about it, a broken bar he didn't finish. I dropped to my knees and started digging, hands flying through the dirt. Elise stepped aside and pulled out her phone, probably calling another investigator, but I wasn't waiting on anyone. Within minutes, I hit metal, a rusted hatch, edges barely clinging to the surrounding dirt. The handle was bolted shut with a heavy old padlock. Got the key? I asked. Derek shook his head. Lost it years ago. So I did what any good country boy would do. I grabbed a crowbar from the truck and popped it open. A few strong jerks, and the lock snapped off. With Derek's help, I pulled the hatch open wide. A wave of musty air escaped, thick with the scent of mildew and old, damp paper. I grabbed a flashlight and dropped down the short ladder. The space beneath the barn was smaller, maybe 6 feet deep, just tall enough to crouch. Shelves lined the walls, all thick with cobwebs and dust. And then I saw it, a wooden crate in the far corner. I moved slowly, opened it carefully. Inside were folders of old property documents, maps, bank receipts from decades ago. And at the very bottom, one sealed envelope, yellowed with agent stamped across the front. If anything happens to me, deliver to the sheriff. I froze, hand trembling as I held it to the light. Derek, still at the top of the hatch, peered down. I wrote that, he said, voice quiet, years ago, just in case Karen ever followed through on her threats. You think she tried to a broken bar? Have you killed? I asked. He nodded grimly. More than once. I climbed out and handed the envelope to Elise. She carefully opened it, unfolding the contents. Her eyes scanned the pages, and her mouth dropped open. Matt, she whispered, this is everything. Letters from Karen, blackmail demands, financial threats, evidence of her siphoning HOA funds into a private account. There was even one letter outlining a plan to deal with Derek's disappearance. She tried to bury all this, I said quietly. And now, Elise replied, we've dug it back up. Just then, more vehicles pulled up near the barn, 2 sheriff cruisers, followed by the county investigator from earlier, and behind them, a sleek black SUV with dark-tinted windows. A tall woman stepped out, wearing a jacket with bright yellow letters, Dodge. She walked toward us, her eyes sweeping the scene. She stopped in front of Elise. You the attorney who made the call? Yes, ma'am, Elise said, handing over the envelope. The agent flipped through its contents quickly. Then she whistled. Well, she said, this just became federal. Derek leaned on his cane, watching her with tired satisfaction. Told you all, that woman's been playing with fire for years. Looks like she finally lit the wrong match. We all stood in silence for a moment. The sun was directly overhead now, casting sharp shadows across the dirt. The lake shimmered in the distance. But the peace I'd once hoped for out here felt a world away. The agent turned to me. Mr. Carter, I suggest you find a different place to stay for the next few days. If these documents are accurate, your HOA and Karen especially may be involved in something much larger than we expected. Criminal activity stretching back a decade, the agent said firmly. Elise nodded. We'll fully cooperate. I let out a heavy sigh. What happens to my home? The agent looked at me with measured seriousness. You're still listed as the legal title holder. Until that changes, it's yours. But I'd lock every door and leave the lights on. Just as we began turning back toward the vehicles, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I answered. Static. Then a familiar voice. Karen's. Cold. Icy. You think you've won? She hissed. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Then she hung up. I stood there, stunned, still gripping the phone. Out of the corner of my eye I caught a flicker of movement. Flames. A small fire had sparked at the base of the barn, licking hungrily at the dry grass near the back wall. Fire! I shouted. Everyone sprang into action, but the fire moved too fast. This wasn't accidental. This was intentional. Someone had set it to erase whatever Karen hadn't already buried. The blaze tore through the grass like it had a purpose. I yanked the hose from the barn's side and twisted the spigot. Nothing, not a drop. The pump's been shut off, I yelled. Buckets, I shouted again, from the lake. Derek and I sprinted down the slope toward the shoreline while Elise barked orders into her phone, calling for backup. We scrambled to fill anything we could find: old paint buckets, a horse trough, even a rusty wash basin. But the fire wasn't waiting. By the time sheriff's deputies arrived with extinguishers from their cruisers, the right half of the barn had already collapsed. Red-hot embers launched into the sky like sparks from a blacksmith's forge. And then a boom. We all dove to the ground. A wave of heat punched the air, followed by the deafening crack of exploding lumber and shattering glass. When I looked up, fire had consumed the area near my tool bench, exactly where I kept the generator fuel. I stared helplessly as the heart of everything I'd built turned to ash. My dream and my sanctuary was burning to the ground. By the time the fire trucks arrived, it was too late. All that remained was a charred skeleton of beams and smoke. The acrid scent of gasoline and scorched earth clung to everything. Daisy whimpered softly, nudging my soot-covered leg as if she could fix it. I looked at my blistered hands, blackened and trembling, and something in me broke and cracked. This wasn't just a property dispute anymore. This was war. The fire chief came over, helmet in hand, eyes scanning the damage. We'll investigate officially, he said. But off the record, that fire was no accident. Someone came for you. I know, I said through gritted teeth. I just don't know how far it goes. The Dodge agent returned, flipping pages in a notepad. We have enough, she said. We're opening a criminal conspiracy case. Wire fraud, forgery, illegal property seizure, and now arson. She locked eyes with me. You'll need to be a part of this, Mr. Carter. We need you as a key witness. I nodded. Whatever it takes. Elise joined us, her expression grim. That fire didn't just take your barn, Matt. It took records, old documents, structural plans, backup files. Derek shook his head slowly. Not all of them, he said. I turned. What do you mean? There's another stash, he replied, eyes drifting toward the dense trees beyond the lake. An old cabin, 2 miles through those woods. I built it before the HOA ever existed. Never registered, never mapped, totally off-grid. You kept copies there? I asked, blinking. He smirked. Call it paranoia. The agent stepped forward. Then we go tonight. But Elise raised a hand. If Karina or whoever's working with Hero catches wind of where we're headed, they'll burn that place too. Then we don't wait, I said. We move now. We split into 2 trucks, Derek, Elise, a sheriff's deputy, and me. We took a narrow trail around the lake as dusk settled in, the orange light dipping low across the water, turning everything copper and still. The trucks stopped where the road ended. From there, we went on foot through thick woods, ducking branches, stepping over roots. The air was heavy. Even the birds were silent. Daisy walked tight at my side, tail low, her nose twitching. After nearly 20 minutes, it came into view, a cabin weathered by time, blanketed in moss. No windows, just a rough iron latch on the door. Derek stepped forward and crouched near a fallen log. From beneath it, he retrieved a key. This is it, he said, Unlocking the door, Derek opened the cabin door and stopped cold. I stepped up beside him, and my gut tightened. The place had been torn apart, papers scattered everywhere, drawers pulled out, cabinets hanging open by broken hinges. The air reeked of mildew mixed with something sharper, chemical, intentional. But amid the chaos, something stood out. In the center of the room, on an old wooden table, sat a single sealed envelope. It was clean, untouched by dust or grime. Recently placed. Elise approached slowly and picked it up. She read the front aloud. To Matt Carter. If you're reading this, you're already in it. Her fingers hesitated at the flap, then opened it. She read in silence at first, then her breath caught. This is from someone inside, she whispered. Someone who knows everything Karen's been involved in. And more. I frowned. What do you mean, more? She looked up, eyes sharp. There's a network, multiple HOAs across the state. Maybe the country are doing the same thing. Fake deaths, fake land seizures, doctored auctions, all of it traced back to one person. She turned the letter toward me. A photo was clipped to the top. A man in a gray business suit, sunglasses, slick, silver hair. I stared and recognition hit me like a gut punch. That's the guy from the county office, the one who approved my sale. Derek spat under his breath. Cliff Dorman, snake in tie. I knew he was in on it. Karen never had the brains to pull this alone. Elise continued reading aloud. If you want to stop them, find the flash drive. It holds everything in names, transactions, land records. But be warned. They know it's missing, and they think you have it. Snap. A sharp sound outside, a broken branch. All of us froze. I slipped my hand into my pocket and wrapped my fingers around my knife. The deputy drew his sidearm silently. Daisy's low growl rumbled through the floorboards. Through the dirty window, twin beams of light pierced the trees. Headlights. Slow. Creeping. Not lost. They were coming. And they weren't bringing cookies. The vehicle rolled forward like a predator stalking prey, then stopped just beyond the tree line. The engine hummed. No one stepped out. Then a click. The lights went dark. We're blind, the deputy muttered. We need to move. Now. We started toward the back exit. But a loud clank hit the porch. Then an threw closer. Heavy boots. Slow steps. A voice followed, deep and deliberate, sliding through the cracks like smoke. Come on out, Mr. Carter. Or should I say a broken bar land thief? The voice dripped venom, but it was familiar. Cliff Dorman, the man from the photo, the one who signed off on the land transfer, the puppeteer behind Karen's strings. Elise whispered, we can't let them get that drive. Derek pointed to the far corner of the room. Loose board. It's under there. Go. I dove for it, yanked at the plank with shaking fingers. It gave. Beneath the dust and old nails, a tiny metal flash drive was taped to a beam. Old, but real. I peeled it off just boom. The front door exploded inward. Wood flying like a grenade went off. Smoke rushed in. Two masked men burst into the cabin, yelling, flashlights blinding. One kicked over the table. The other lunged for Elise's bag, ripping it from her shoulder and throwing her to the floor. Then a snarl. Daisy launched like a missile, her jaws locking onto one man's arm. He shrieked, spinning, trying to shake her loose. The deputy raised his gun and fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Drop it. Now. The second intruder froze, dropped Elise's bag, and ran. The first spun wildly. Daisy still latched to his forearm. He smashed into the wall, trying to knock her off. I didn't think I charged. Tackled him clean out the door, and we crashed into the dirt. He elbowed me hard in the ribs and scrambled free, disappearing into the woods. Gone. Just like that it was over. Smoke hung heavy in the air, curling out of the busted doorway. The whole fight hadn't lasted 60 seconds, but everything had changed. The smoke still lingered in the air. The cabin door hung twisted on its hinges, splinters littering the floor. My chest burned from the scuffle, my ribs screaming with every breath, but I kept the flash drive clenched in my fist like it was life itself, because at that moment, it was. We were scraped, bruised, and barely holding it together. Elise's arm was bleeding, her sleeve soaked crimson. She didn't even flinch. We need to go, she said, voice strained, before they come back with more. Derek nodded. I know a shortcut through the creek bed. If we move fast, We'll hit the road in 15. The deputy tried radioing for backup, but all he got was static. He grimaced. Signal's garbage out here. We'll meet them halfway. And so we moved, through brush, mud, and roots that grabbed at our ankles like they wanted to pull us under. Thorns tore at our clothes. My legs burned. My lungs begged. But none of it mattered. The only thing I could feel was the heat of the flash drive burning in my pocket like a loaded gun. Inside item names, deeds, wire transfers, 10 years of fraud and corruption, everything. We hit the road just as a second sheriff cruiser skidded into view, lights flashing. The Dodge agent jumped out of the passenger seat the moment she saw us. She ran straight to Elise. "Are you okay?" Elise winced, nodding. "We got the drive." I handed it over. Her hands trembled as she took it. She stared at the tiny device like it held the future. This could blow the entire network wide open. We've been chasing ghosts for years. This might be it. But before the moment could settle, Elise's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her expression changed. Stone cold. "What is it?" I asked. Her eyes locked on mine. "There's been a break-in at your house." My knees went weak. "What?" "They tore through your living room," the Dodge agent said grimly, "looking for the flash drive." "But they didn't find it?" I asked, breath catching. She nodded. "Number." "But they left something." She held out her phone. A photo, spray-painted in dripping red letters across my living room wall. "Give IT back or you're next." I stared at it in silence. My home, the sanctuary I fought so hard to keep. Violated, desecrated, threatened. Daisy whimpered and nudged against my leg. Even she could feel it. Something big was coming. The agent put a firm hand on my shoulder. "You're going into protective custody," she said. "We're releasing Dorman's name to the public in the morning. He'll panic. We need you alive." I barely heard her. Elise stepped close. "Matt. This is the part where it gets worse before it gets better. But we are so close. Just hold on." Before I could respond, the distant squeal of tires tore through the stillness. A black SUV shot past us, barreling down the road. It was heading straight for my ranch. And I knew this time, they weren't coming to search. They were coming to finish the job. "No," I barked. "They're going to burn it." I didn't wait. I dove into the driver's seat of the cruiser, slammed the door, and jammed the accelerator to the floor. The Dodge agent barely managed to climb in before the tires peeled out. Dust flew in our wake. Sirens off. Just speed and purpose. I knew these roads. Every curve, every dip. This was my land, my fight, and I wasn't about to lose it again. Elise followed in her SUV, Derek and the deputy in the back. The flash drive locked in Derek's grip like it held the keys to the entire county. We rounded the last bend and my stomach dropped. There they were. Two black SUVs parked right in front of my house. The front door was wide open. Smoke curled through the doorway. Not flames yet, but it was coming. A red gasoline can sat beside the porch. One man stood near the generator, holding a lit flare. Daisy exploded in a frenzy of barking. Her warning shook through the steel of the truck. "They're going to torch it," I growled. "Not if I can stop them." "Mata!" The agent shouted, but she was too late. Crash! I aimed for the nearest SUV and hit it full force. The front bumper slammed into its side, metal screeching, tires skidding off into a wooden fence. The flare flew from the man's hand, landing harmlessly on the gravel. I threw the door open and jumped out, a heart racing, fist clenched. I wasn't running anymore. Not from them. Not from this war. This was my land, and I was going to fight for it. Before the truck had even fully stopped, I was out, charging straight toward the porch. "Freeze!" A voice barked behind me. "Deputy Gunn." The man with the flare hesitated, startled it just long enough to turn and sprint a broken bar directly into Elise's SUV. Bam! She clipped his knee with the bumper, dropping him to the dirt. With a cry of pain, Derek rolled out of the passenger side like an old war hero answering the call, and Kraka brought his walking stick down across the guy's back. One down. The second arsonist bolted behind the barn, but didn't get far. Two sheriff deputies tackled him into the mud like linebackers. Weapons secured, gas cans confiscated, and Sama in my house still stood. The adrenaline drained in an instant. My knees gave out on the porch steps. I sank down hard, heart pounding, hands shaking, staring at the trail of muddy footprints they'd tracked across my living room. We'd stopped them. The Dodge agent stepped up beside me, phone pressed to her ear. "We've got 2 in custody," she said. "Confirmed associates of Cliff Dorman. Intent was to destroy evidence at the Carter property." She hung up and looked at me. "One of them's already talking. They were under orders to torch it all before we could go public." Elise came toward us, covered in dust, wild-eyed, a broken bar and grinning. "Matt," she breathed, "it's over." But I wasn't so sure. "Cliff?" I asked quietly. "Where is he?" The agent's smile faded. "Gone. Slipped out just before we hit the HOA headquarters and county clerk's office. But we've got a federal warrant. He won't stay gone for long." I stood up slowly, looking out over the property. My ranch. The land was wounded, no doubt, but still here, like me. The next week was a blur. Karen Marsh was arrested, charged with conspiracy, forgery, property fraud. So were 3 other HOA presidents in neighboring counties. The investigation blew wide open. Turns out they'd built an empire on fake death certificates, corrupt county clerks, and land seizures masked as environmental efforts. 2 days later, Cliff Dorman was found hiding on a yacht off the Gulf Coast. The FBI dragged him off in handcuffs. Racketeering, arson, wire fraud. It stuck. And Derek, his name was cleared, his land was restored. And in a move that left me speechless, he handed me half the deed. "You earned it," he said. "You fought harder than I ever did." Elise made sure every shadow over my name was wiped clean. The Dodge formally recognized me for helping uncover one of the largest HOA-linked fraud rings in the state. They offered me protective status. But I didn't need it anymore, because my HOA broken bar was truly mine. We rebuilt the barn together. Derek moved into the old cabin for good. The local veterans group helped fix it up. Elise launched her own initiative via free legal aid for small landowners. She said no one should have to fight the system alone. And me, I got peace, real peace. 6 months later, I hosted a community fish fry down by the lake. People came in droves, as neighbors, deputies, folks who'd followed the story online. Even Daisy got her own honorary badge from the sheriff's department. Officer Daisy, they called her, biter of bad guys, defender of porches. And as I stood there by the dock, a cold beer in hand, watching kids splash and old friends laugh, I felt something I hadn't in years. Safe, proud, because when someone tries to steal what you built with your own hands, you don't roll over, you fight, with truth, with grit, with everything you've got. And sometimes, just sometimes, you keep a certain envelope riding shotgun on your front seat, a broken bar, so when Karen Marsh sees it in court, she finally understands, she messed with the wrong man.